The streets of New Seattle glowed with artificial light, even at 3 in the morning. Jake Morrison guided his taxi through the empty roads of humanity's largest city on Mars, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. 15 years of driving the night shift had taught him to expect anything. Drunks, criminals, lost tourists, and occasionally people running from their problems. But tonight would bring something he could never have imagined. The red dust of Mars swirled outside his windows as Jake finished his last pickup near the spaceport. An off-world businessman heading to a hotel in the corporate district. Standard fare, decent tip, nothing unusual. Jake dropped him off and checked his dashboard. The clock read 2:47 a.m. Time to head home. He started driving toward his apartment in the lower city levels, already thinking about the instant noodles waiting in his kitchen and maybe an hour of sleep before the sun rose. The taxi's interior was quiet, except for the hum of the electric engine and the occasional beep from the dispatch system, which he had turned to silent mode. No more fares tonight. He was done. Then he heard it. A soft sound from the back seat. A whimper, like a hurt animal or a crying child. Jake's foot hit the brake instinctively. The taxi slowed to a stop on an empty street, lined with closed shops and dark windows. His heart began to race. Had someone been hiding back there the whole time? How was that possible? He always checked between passengers. Slowly Jake turned in his seat and looked back. At first, he saw nothing in the darkness of the rear compartment. Then he noticed a small lump beneath the emergency blanket he kept folded on the back seat. The blanket was moving slightly, rising and falling with shallow breaths. "Hey," Jake said carefully, his hand moving toward the alarm button on his dashboard. "Who's back there? Come out where I can see you." The blanket trembled. Another whimper, this time clearly from a child. A girl's voice, small and terrified. Jake's alarm faded slightly. Whatever was happening, there was a scared kid involved. He had been a lot of things in his life. A troublemaker in his youth. A man with a criminal record he wasn't proud of. Someone who had made plenty of mistakes. But he had never been the kind of person who scared children. "It's okay," he said more gently. "I'm not going to hurt you. Just come out so we can talk." Slowly, a small hand emerged from beneath the blanket. Jake's breath caught in his throat. The hand had 6 fingers instead of 5. The skin wasn't quite right either. It had a faint shimmer to it, like oil on water, reflecting the dim light inside the taxi. The blanket pulled back further, and Jake found himself staring at a child unlike any he had ever seen. She looked about 8 or 9 years old in human terms, but she was definitely not human. Her face was humanoid, but different in subtle ways. Her eyes were too large, with vertical pupils like a cat's, that reflected the dashboard lights with an amber glow. Her skin had that same iridescent quality, shifting between pale blue and silver. Small ridges ran along her cheekbones, almost like delicate scales. She was shaking violently, her strange eyes wide with fear. Her clothing was torn and dirty, and even in the dim light, Jake could see dark stains on the fabric. But the color was wrong, not red like human blood, but deep purple. "Please," she whispered in accented but understandable English. "Please don't call them. They'll hurt me again." Jake sat frozen, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. Mars had alien visitors, sure. The spaceport handled ships from a dozen different species. But those were adults, official travelers with proper documentation. This was a child, injured and terrified, hiding in his taxi in the middle of the night. "Who will hurt you?" Jake asked slowly. "Who are you running from?" The girl flinched at the question, fresh tears spilling from those alien eyes. She pulled her arms close to her body, and Jake noticed burn marks on her wrists. Deliberate marks, too precise to be accidental. Someone had done that to her on purpose. The realization made his stomach turn. Bad people, she managed to say. They take us. They keep us in dark place. They hurt us when we cry. I ran away, been hiding for days, so cold, so scared. Jake's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Every logical part of his brain was screaming at him to call the police, to contact alien services, to let the authorities handle this. He was just a taxi driver. He had enough problems in his own life without getting involved in whatever this situation was. But he looked at those terrified eyes, at those burn marks on her small wrists, at the way she trembled like a leaf in a storm. He thought about the word she had used, us, meaning there were others, other children being hurt somewhere in this city. "What's your name?" Jake asked quietly. The girl hesitated, then whispered, "Zara." "Okay, Zara, my name is Jake. I'm going to help you, but first I need to look at your injuries. Is that okay?" Zara stared at him for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether she could trust this strange human. Finally, she gave a small nod. Jake pulled the taxi into a dark alley between two warehouse buildings and turned on the interior light. What he saw made his decision for him. Zara's injuries were worse than he thought. Burns, bruises, cuts that looked like they came from restraints. This child had been tortured. In that moment, Jake Morrison made a choice that would change his entire life. He wasn't going to call the authorities. Not yet. Not until he understood what was happening and could be sure Zara wouldn't be sent right back to whoever had hurt her. "Hang on, kid," he said, putting the taxi in gear. "We're going somewhere safe. I promise nobody's going to hurt you again." As he drove through the empty streets toward his apartment, Jake glanced in the rearview mirror. Zara had wrapped herself back in the blanket, but her glowing eyes watched him carefully, filled with a desperate hope that broke his heart. He had no idea what he was getting into, no idea that this moment would lead to danger, discovery, and a fight that would change not just his life, but the future of human-alien relations across the solar system. All he knew was that a frightened child had asked him for help, and for the first time in a very long time, Jake Morrison was going to do the right thing. The taxi disappeared into the Martian night, carrying a secret that would soon shake the foundations of New Seattle and expose darkness hiding in the city's gleaming towers. Jake's apartment was located in Sector 7, the cheapest housing district in New Seattle, where questions weren't asked and neighbors minded their own business. The building was old, constructed during the early Mars colonization days, with rusty metal walls and flickering hallway lights that buzzed like dying insects. Perfect for staying invisible. He parked his taxi in the underground garage and carefully helped Zara out of the back seat. She could barely walk, her legs weak from days of hiding and running. Without thinking twice, Jake picked her up. She weighed almost nothing, her body light and fragile in his arms. She tensed at first, then slowly relaxed, too exhausted to maintain her fear. The elevator was broken as usual, so Jake climbed 5 flights of stairs with Zara clinging to his neck. By the time he reached his door, both were breathing hard. His apartment was small, just 1 bedroom, a bathroom, and a combination kitchen-living area that could fit inside a decent-sized closet. But it was clean, private, and most importantly, safe. Jake laid Zara on his worn couch and grabbed his first aid kit from the bathroom cabinet. He had basic medical supplies left over from his younger days when bar fights were a regular occurrence. But as he looked at Zara's injuries under proper light, He realized human medicine might not work on alien biology. "I'm going to clean these wounds," Jake said softly, kneeling beside the couch. "Tell me if anything hurts too much." Zara nodded, watching his every move with those unsettling vertical pupil eyes. Jake worked carefully, using antiseptic wipes on the cuts and burns. To his relief, she didn't react badly to the human medicine. Her purple blood stopped flowing after he applied pressure and bandages. As he worked, Zara began to speak in broken sentences, mixing English with words from her own language. Her people were called the Verani. They came from a star system devastated by war, fleeing to human space as refugees. Her parents had saved money for years to buy passage on a transport ship, hoping to start a new life on Mars. But the ship never made it to the official refugee center. Pirates came. Zara whispered, her voice cracking. Men with guns. They separated families, took children to different ships. I screamed for Mama, but they hit me, made me quiet. Jake's jaw tightened as he listened. He had heard rumors about alien trafficking, whispers in the taxi driver community about illegal operations in the industrial zones. But he never imagined it was this organized or this brutal. "They kept us in metal boxes," Zara continued, tears streaming down her iridescent cheeks. "Cold, dark, sometimes they came with devices that hurt us. Testing, they said, making sure we were healthy for buyers. Other children cried all the time. Some stopped crying, just stopped moving." Jake had to pause his bandaging, his hands shaking with anger. Children. They were trafficking children like cargo, like products to be sold. "How did you escape?" he asked. Zara's eyes flickered with something that might have been pride. "I'm small. They thought I was weak. But Verani children can squeeze through tight spaces. During transfer between facilities, I found gap in transport container. Squeezed out while guards weren't looking. Ran into the city, hid in different places. Found your taxi parked near food market. Door was unlocked. I crawled inside and hid under blanket. Waited. How long were you in my taxi?" 2 days, maybe 3. I lose track of time. So hungry, so tired. Thought you would find me and turn me over. But you kept driving, never checked back seat properly. I stayed quiet as possible." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. This child had been hiding in his taxi for days while he drove passengers around the city, completely unaware. The traffickers must have been searching frantically, which meant they were probably still searching. Over the next few days, Jake called in sick to work and devoted himself to keeping Zara hidden and helping her recover. He bought children's clothes from a discount store, paying cash to avoid leaving digital traces. He researched Verani dietary needs on the dark web and discovered they could eat most human foods but needed mineral supplements found in certain vegetables. Zara was a fast learner. Her English improved dramatically within days, absorbing vocabulary like a sponge. She was curious about everything in the apartment. The television, the microwave, the simple act of running water from a tap. Things Jake took for granted amazed her, but every noise in the hallway made her freeze. Every knock on a neighbor's door sent her diving under the couch. She slept in short bursts, waking up screaming from nightmares about the metal boxes and the men with their cruel testing devices. On the 4th night, Jake was preparing dinner when Zara suddenly grabbed his arm. Her eyes had gone wide, pupils dilating to almost complete circles. "What's wrong?" Jake asked. "Something bad," she whispered. "I feel it. My people sense danger. Something watching us." Jake moved to the window and carefully pulled back the curtain. His blood ran cold. Across the street, barely visible in the shadows, a surveillance drone, hovered near a rooftop. It was pointed directly at his building. These weren't police drones. They were unmarked, military-grade equipment that cost serious money. Someone knew Zara was here, or at least suspected. Jake let the curtain fall and turned to face the frightened alien child who had somehow become his responsibility. He was just a taxi driver with a criminal past and barely enough money to pay rent. He had no weapons, no powerful friends, no experience fighting organized criminals. The smart thing would be to call the police and hope for the best. But looking at Zara's terrified face, remembering the burn marks on her wrists and the other children still trapped in those metal boxes, Jake realized something important about himself. He had spent 15 years running from his past, taking the easy path, avoiding trouble. Maybe it was time to stop running. "Pack your things," Jake said quietly. "We can't stay here." "Where we go?" Zara asked. Jake pulled out his old phone and stared at a contact he hadn't called in 3 years. His sister, Maya. They had fought, said terrible things to each other, and hadn't spoken since. But she was an investigative journalist who specialized in exposing corruption. If anyone could help, it was her. "We're going to find people who can fight back," Jake said, "and we're going to stop the people who hurt you." For the first time since he found her, Zara smiled. It was a small, fragile thing, but it lit up her alien features with hope. Outside, the surveillance drone continued its patient watch, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Maya Chen lived on the opposite side of New Seattle, in a middle-class neighborhood where journalists and teachers could afford modest apartments with actual windows that faced the Martian landscape. Jake hadn't set foot in this part of the city in years, and showing up at her door at midnight with an alien child felt like the worst possible way to reconnect with his estranged sister. But he had no choice. The surveillance drones had multiplied around his old apartment building. Jake had grabbed Zara and slipped out through the maintenance tunnels he remembered from his troubled youth, the same routes he once used to avoid police. Some skills, apparently, never disappeared. Maya opened her door on the third knock, her face shifting from annoyance to shock to confusion in rapid succession. She looked older than Jake remembered. Her hair had streaks of gray now, and lines creased her forehead. But her eyes still held that sharp intelligence that had always intimidated him. "Jake, what the hell are you?" She stopped mid-sentence when she saw Zara peeking out from behind him. "Is that—" "Can we come in, please? It's complicated and dangerous, and I really need your help." Maya stared at them for a long moment, then stepped aside. This better be good. Inside her apartment, surrounded by stacks of papers, multiple computer screens, and walls covered with notes and photographs, Jake told her everything. Maya listened without interrupting, her journalist instincts keeping her face neutral even as the story grew darker. When Jake finished, she sat in silence for a full minute. "You realize what you're asking me to get involved in?" Maya finally said. "If even half of what you're saying is true, we're talking about a trafficking operation connected to serious money and power, the kind of people who make witnesses disappear." "I know. But look at her, Maya. Really look." Maya turned her attention to Zara, who sat curled up on the couch, trying to make herself as small as possible. Despite her alien appearance, there was something universally recognizable in her posture. A frightened child seeking safety. Maya's expression softened. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Zara," came the quiet reply. "Well, Zara, I'm Maya. I'm Jake's sister. Are you hungry?" Zara nodded hesitantly. Maya went to her kitchen and returned with fruit and cheese. which Zara ate with desperate hunger, as if she still couldn't quite believe food would keep appearing. Over the following weeks, Maya's apartment became their sanctuary. She made calls, reached out to contacts, and slowly assembled a team. First came David Chen, no relation despite the shared last name, a lawyer who specialized in refugee and alien rights cases. He was young, idealistic, and angry about the broken immigration system that allowed trafficking to flourish. Then Sarah Rodriguez joined them, a former military medic who had served in the outer colonies. She had seen enough corruption in her service years to be skeptical of official channels. When she examined Zara, her professional demeanor cracked. Whoever did this knew exactly how to cause maximum pain without killing her. Sarah said, her voice tight with controlled rage. These injuries are methodical. This was torture, plain and simple. The final member of their group appeared through Maya's darknet contacts, someone known only as Ghost. They never met him in person. He communicated through encrypted messages and proved his value immediately by hacking into shipping manifests and warehouse records that revealed the scope of the trafficking operation. While the adults planned, Jake spent his days with Zara. He had quit his taxi job, knowing the traffickers might track him through work records. Money was getting tight, but Maya insisted on helping with expenses. For the first time in years, Jake felt like he had family again. Zara slowly came out of her shell. The nightmares continued, but they became less frequent. She started asking questions about everything: how human cities worked, why Mars needed domed habitats, what Earth looked like from space. Her intelligence was remarkable. She could learn new concepts with just one explanation, remembering details with photographic precision. Jake taught her to play simple card games. She taught him words in Varani, a language that sounded like musical chimes mixed with whispers. They developed routines: breakfast together, lessons in human culture, afternoons watching old Earth movies that Zara found endlessly fascinating. "Why do humans always hug when they're sad?" she asked one day, after watching a particularly emotional film. "It's how we show we care," Jake explained. "Physical contact makes us feel less alone." Zara considered this carefully. Then slowly, she moved closer to Jake on the couch and leaned against his shoulder. It was the first time she had initiated physical contact since that night he carried her up to his apartment. Jake felt something crack open in his chest, a protective instinct so fierce it scared him. "You're safe now," he whispered. "I promise." Zara looked up at him with those strange, beautiful eyes. "You're like Varani, father," she said quietly. "We have word. Cathara means protector who chooses you, not born to you. You're my Cathara." Jake blinked back unexpected tears. He had never wanted children, never thought he would be any good at caring for another person. But sitting there with this alien child who trusted him, despite every reason not to trust anyone, he realized she had become the most important thing in his life. Maya entered the room, her expression serious. Ghost found something. The main trafficking facility. We know where it is. Industrial Zone 12, disguised as a mineral processing plant. And Jake. There are at least 30 children being held there. Different species, different ages. Zara wasn't exaggerating. Zara sat up straight, her skin patterns flickering with agitation, something that happened when she was stressed. "We have to save them. They're so scared, so hurt. Please." "We're working on it," Maya assured her. "David is researching legal options. Ghost is gathering evidence. Sarah is doing what Sarah does best." "Which is?" Jake asked. Maya smiled grimly. "Planning a rescue operation." Turns out our medic has some very particular skills from her military days. That night, after Zara fell asleep on Maya's guest bed, the adults gathered around the kitchen table. Maps, photographs, and security diagrams covered every surface. The trafficking facility was heavily guarded, protected by private security that wouldn't hesitate to shoot intruders. "This is insane," David said, not for the first time. "We should hand all this evidence to federal authorities and let them handle it. The evidence Ghost found shows federal officials are on the trafficking payroll." Maya countered, "We can't trust the system." "So what, we just storm a fortified facility and hope for the best?" David asked. Sarah spread out a detailed floor plan on the table. "Not hope, plan. I've got contacts. Former military people who hate what's being done to these kids. Give me 2 weeks, and I'll have a team ready." Jake listened to them argue, watched their determination, and felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope, not just for Zara, but for all the children trapped in darkness. Maybe they really could make a difference. Maybe one taxi driver and his unlikely team could stand against the monsters. Outside, the Martian stars shone cold and distant. Inside, a fragile alliance was forming, built on compassion and rage in equal measure. The countdown to rescue had begun. 2 weeks became 3, as Sarah assembled her team and Ghost continued digging deeper into the trafficking network. What they discovered made everyone's blood run cold. The operation wasn't just about selling alien children as exotic pets or curiosities. It was far worse. Ghost's encrypted message appeared on Maya's screen late one night. "Found the buyer list. Medical research facilities, weapons development labs. Some sales to private collectors, but most go to corporations experimenting on alien biology. They're not buying pets. They're buying test subjects." Jake read the message over Maya's shoulder and felt sick. Zara was sleeping in the next room, finally peaceful after weeks of fear. She had started laughing again, her strange musical laughter that sounded like wind chimes. She drew pictures of her parents, describing them in detail, her mother's gentle voice, her father's terrible jokes. She held on to hope that they were alive somewhere, waiting for her, and people wanted to buy children like her for experiments. "We're moving up the timeline," Sarah announced the next morning. She had gathered everyone in Maya's apartment, including 3 of her former military contacts. They looked like ordinary people, a warehouse worker, a delivery driver, a maintenance technician. But Jake recognized the way they moved, the alertness in their eyes. These were dangerous people, pretending to be harmless. Industrial Zone 12 runs a shift change at 200 hours, Sarah continued, pointing to the facility blueprints spread across the table. "That's our window, 4 minutes when security is transitioning and the internal cameras reset. Ghost, can you loop the external feeds?" "Already mapped the system." Ghost's text appeared on Maya's laptop. "Give me 30 seconds physical access to their junction box. I can give you 20 minutes of blank footage. 20 minutes to get in, locate the children, and get out," said Marcus, one of Sarah's contacts. He was the warehouse worker, a man with scarred hands and eyes that had seen too much. "That's tight. It's what we have," Sarah replied. "David, what's our legal situation?" David Chen looked uncomfortable. For 3 weeks, he had been arguing for legitimate channels, for working within the system. But the evidence kept pointing to the system being compromised. "If we pull this off, I can file emergency asylum claims for all the rescued children. I've got temporary custody documentation prepared. But if anything goes wrong, if anyone gets seriously hurt or killed, we're all facing serious prison time." "Noted," Sarah said without hesitation. "Next issue." Transport. We're talking about 30 traumatized kids of various species. We can't just load them into taxis. I have access to medical transport vehicles, offered Elena, the maintenance technician in Sarah's group. I can have 2 ambulances positioned nearby. If anyone asks, we're responding to an industrial accident. What about me? Jake asked. Everyone turned to look at him. I'm going. Don't even think about leaving me behind. Jake, you're not trained for this, Maya said gently. You'll be a liability. Zara trusts me. When those kids are freed, they'll be terrified. They'll need someone calm, someone who can help keep them quiet during extraction. That's me. He's right. Zara's voice came from the doorway. They all turned to see her standing there in the oversized shirt Jake had bought her, her luminescent skin patterns glowing with determination. Children won't trust soldiers. They've been hurt by adults with guns. They need someone kind. They need Jake. Absolutely not, Jake said immediately, understanding what she was suggesting. You're not coming, Zara. It's too dangerous. I speak 4 alien languages, Zara countered, walking into the room with surprising confidence. The children inside, they're not all Virani. Some are Krill, some are Tashani. They won't understand your English, but they'll understand me. They'll trust another child who survived. The room fell silent. Everyone knew she was right, but the thought of bringing her back to the place she had escaped from was unbearable. She stays here, Jake said firmly. That's final. Zara's eyes met his, and Jake saw something he hadn't seen before. Steel beneath the gentleness. She had survived torture and days of running through a hostile city. She was stronger than he gave her credit for. When I was in the box, Zara said quietly, I heard other children crying. I promised them in my head that if I escaped, I would come back for them. I would not leave them in darkness. You cannot break my promise, Jake. I won't let you. Sarah watched this exchange with professional assessment. She could work. We keep her in the transport vehicle, protected, never inside the facility itself. She communicates with the kids through the extraction team's radios, helps keep them calm. At first sign of trouble, Elena drives her away to safety. That's still too much risk, Jake protested. Everything about this is risk, Marcus interjected. But the kid's got guts, and she's right. Those children will respond better to her voice than to armed strangers. The debate continued for hours. Finally, reluctantly, Jake agreed to let Zara participate in the limited role Sarah outlined. He hated it, but he understood that Zara needed this. She needed to be part of saving the others, needed to fulfill the promise she had made in her darkest moments. The following nights were filled with preparation. Sarah drilled the team on timing, entry points, emergency protocols. Ghost provided real-time security updates. David prepared legal documents. Maya crafted the story she would release the moment the operation began. A complete exposure of the trafficking network, with all the evidence Ghost had gathered. Jake spent his time with Zara, teaching her how to use the communication equipment, helping her practice calming phrases in different languages. She was a natural, her voice carrying an authority that belied her size. You're scared, Zara observed one night as they practiced. Terrified, Jake admitted. I've never done anything like this before. I'm not a hero, Zara. I'm just a taxi driver who happened to find you. No, Zara said seriously, her patterns glowing soft green, the color of affection. You're a father who will do anything to protect his children, all of them, not just me. That's what makes you brave, not the absence of fear, but doing what's right despite the fear. Jake looked at this extraordinary child and wondered when exactly she had become his daughter. Not legally, not biologically, but in every way that mattered. The night before the operation, The entire team gathered one final time. Sarah went through the plan step by step. Ghost confirmed the security vulnerabilities. David had the legal paperwork ready. Maya had her broadcast prepared to go live at exactly Oro Tuas theme hours. Last chance to back out, Sarah said, looking at each person in turn. After tonight, there's no going back. We'll either be heroes or criminals, possibly both. No one backed out. As they prepared to leave, Jake pulled Maya aside. If something happens to me, nothing will happen, Maya interrupted. But if it does, take care of Zara, help her find her parents, make sure she gets a real life, not a lab somewhere. Maya hugged her brother tightly. You come back, Jake. You hear me? You both come back. The team dispersed to their positions. Jake sat in the ambulance with Zara and Elena, watching the clock tick toward the 200 hours. Zara held his hand, her 6 fingers intertwining with his 5. Thank you for being my Cathara, she whispered. Thank you for giving me a reason to be brave. Jake whispered back. The radio crackled. Sarah's voice. All teams, we are go. Operation begins in 60 seconds. Jake took a deep breath. Somewhere in that facility, 30 children waited, in darkness, hoping for rescue they didn't believe would come. Tonight, hope would have faces. Tonight, one taxi driver and his unlikely family would prove that ordinary people could stand against extraordinary evil. The countdown began. The Martian night was dark and still when Sarah's team moved toward the facility perimeter. Industrial Zone 12 looked exactly like what it claimed to be. A mineral processing plant with standard security, routine operations, nothing worth a second glance. But Ghost's intelligence painted a different picture. Beneath the legitimate business, hidden behind false walls and locked doors, was a prison holding children from a dozen different worlds. Jake sat in the ambulance 2 blocks away, listening to the operation unfold through his earpiece. His heart hammered against his ribs so hard he could barely hear the whispered communications from Sarah's team. Ghost, we're at the junction box. Marcus's voice crackled softly. 15 seconds. Ghost's text appeared on the tablet Elena held. Connecting now. You have 20 minutes before the loop becomes detectable. Moving to entry point Alpha, Sarah whispered. External guards are changing shift. Window is open. Jake glanced at Zara beside him. She sat perfectly still, her skin patterns cycling through nervous purples and blues. In her hands, she held the radio that would let her communicate with the children once they were found. Elena had her hands on the steering wheel, ready to evacuate at the first sign of trouble. We're inside, Sarah's voice came through. Proceeding to the lower level, no contact yet. The minutes crawled by with agonizing slowness. Jake listened to the team's progress. Doors bypassed, corridors cleared, security systems fooled by Ghost's digital magic. Everything was going according to plan, which made him even more nervous. Nothing ever went perfectly according to plan. Found them, Marcus suddenly whispered, and Jake heard something break in the tough veteran's voice. Oh God, Sarah, there are so many. Stay focused, Sarah commanded. Beginning extraction protocol. Jake, we need Zara. Jake handed the radio to Zara, who took it with trembling fingers. I'm ready, she said. Through the earpiece, Jake heard the sounds of the facility, the hum of machinery, the echo of footsteps, and then something that made his chest tighten. Children crying, whimpering, the sounds of terror. Zara pressed the transmit button and began to speak. First in Varani, her native language flowing like musical notes. Then in languages Jake didn't recognize, her voice carrying across the radio waves to the frightened children 2 blocks away. It's okay. Help is here. People who care are coming to save you. Stay quiet. Stay calm. You're going home." The effect was immediate. Through the earpiece, Jake heard the crying diminish. Small voices began responding in different languages. Sarah's team moved faster now, unlocking containment cells, helping children out of the metal boxes that had been their prisons. "We've got 15 kids out," Marcus reported, moving to Section B. Then everything went wrong. "Alarm! Someone triggered a silent alarm." Ghost's text flashed red on the screen. "Security protocols activating. You have maybe 3 minutes before armed response arrives." "Abort?" Marcus asked. "Negative," Sarah snapped. "We don't leave anyone behind. Double time it, people. Move." Jake listened helplessly as the operation descended into controlled chaos. Sarah's team scrambled to free the remaining children while security teams mobilized throughout the facility. He heard doors slamming, shouts in the distance, the unmistakable sound of weapons being readied. "We need more time," Sarah said urgently. "Ghost, can you—" "Already on it," Ghost interrupted via text. "Triggering false fire alarms in the main building should draw some security away, but you need to move now." "Contact," one of Sarah's team members shouted. "Guards in Corridor C." Gunfire erupted through the earpiece. Jake jumped up, ready to run toward the facility, but Elena grabbed his arm. "You'll only make it worse," she said firmly. "Trust Sarah. She knows what she's doing." Zara was still talking into the radio, her voice steady, despite the fear in her eyes. She was telling the children to stay down, stay quiet, to trust the people helping them. Jake could hear her words having effect. The frightened cries turned to whispers, chaos becoming coordination. "Got them pinned down," Marcus reported between bursts of gunfire. "Sarah, take the kids through the south exit. We'll cover you." "Marcus, don't do anything stupid," Sarah warned. "Too late for that. We signed up for stupid the moment we agreed to this. Now go." More gunfire. Then Sarah's voice. "We're at the south exit. 23 children accounted for, but there are 7 more in a separate wing. They were being prepared for shipment." Jake's blood ran cold. Prepared for shipment meant sedated, packaged, ready to be sold. "Ghost, how long before we're compromised?" Sarah asked. "Security override in 90 seconds. Police response in 4 minutes. If you're not out by then, you won't get out." The decision hung in the air. Save the 23 and escape, or risk everything for 7 more. "I'm going after them," Sarah said. "Elena, be ready for immediate evac. Marcus, hold that position for 1 more minute." "Sarah, no," Jake shouted into the radio, abandoning protocol. "Get the kids you have to safety. We can come back for—" "Nobody comes back from wherever they're being shipped," Sarah cut him off. 60 seconds. I can do this." Jake listened in agony as Sarah ran deeper into the facility. He heard her breath rasping through the earpiece, heard doors being blown open with explosive charges, heard the sounds of medical equipment being torn apart as she freed sedated children. "Got them," 7 confirmed, moving to exit now. Then Zara gasped. Her skin patterns flashed bright crimson, the color of danger. "What?" Jake demanded. "What do you sense?" "Trap," Zara whispered. "They're hurting her. The exit is—" An explosion rocked the industrial zone. Even from 2 blocks away, Jake felt the shock wave. Flames erupted from the south side of the facility. "Sarah!" Marcus shouted through the radio. "Sarah!" Static, then coughing. "I'm okay. Exit's blocked. Fire everywhere. Kids are scared but mobile. Need another way out." "North emergency exit." Ghost's text appeared, but it's crawling with security. "Then we make our own exit," Marcus growled. "I'm coming to you, Sarah. Nobody gets left behind." The next few minutes were the longest of Jake's life. He listened to Sarah and Marcus fight their way through smoke and security, carrying and dragging 30 children of various species toward any opening they could find. The facility was in complete chaos now, alarms blaring, automatic fire suppression systems flooding corridors, security teams scrambling in confusion. "Breaching west wall," Marcus announced. "Everybody down." Another explosion, this one smaller, more controlled. Then fresh air sounds through the radio. "We're out! We're out!" Sarah's voice was pure relief. All 30 kids accounted for, heading to Rally Point Alpha. Elena immediately started the ambulance engine, pulling around to the extraction point. Jake saw them emerging from the smoke, Sarah and Marcus supporting each other, both injured but mobile, and behind them a trail of children. Some walked on their own, others were carried by the team members. They were all sizes, all colors, all species, and they were all free. The second ambulance pulled up beside them. Both teams worked frantically to load children into the vehicles. Zara jumped out to help, speaking to the terrified kids in their own languages, her presence calming them like magic. Jake moved among them, offering water, blankets, gentle reassurance. A small krill child, reptilian features, golden eyes, grabbed his hand and wouldn't let go. A Tashani girl with feathered arms whispered, "Thank you," in broken English. Each child was a life saved, a future reclaimed. "Police response incoming," Ghost warned. 2 minutes out. Maya, trigger the broadcast now. Across every network, Maya's story went live. The evidence Ghost had gathered, the testimony Zara had recorded, the proof of trafficking that implicated dozens of powerful people. By the time police arrived at the facility, billions of people across human space were watching the truth unfold. The ambulances raced through the night toward David's prearranged safe location, a refugee services building whose director was sympathetic to their cause. As sirens wailed behind them, Jake held the small krill child and looked at Zara, who was singing softly to calm the others. They had done it. Against all odds, one taxi driver and his unlikely family had stood against evil and won. But Jake knew this was just the beginning. The real fight was about to start. The safe house was absolute chaos for the first 48 hours. 30 alien children of 12 different species, each traumatized, injured, and terrified, filled the refugee services building with a cacophony of sounds and emotions. Medical staff worked around the clock, treating burns, malnutrition, and psychological trauma. Translators struggled to communicate with species they had only read about in textbooks. And through it all, Zara moved like a small ambassador, speaking languages the adults couldn't, calming fears they couldn't understand. Jake had barely slept since the rescue. He sat in a corner of the main room, the small krill child, whose name he learned was Ticket, still clinging to his hand. The child hadn't let go for 2 days straight, even sleeping curled against Jake's side. Something about this exhausted taxi driver represented safety in a universe that had shown Ticket only cruelty. Meanwhile, Maya's broadcast had exploded across human space like a supernova. The evidence was undeniable. Financial records linking the trafficking operation to corporate executives, government officials, and even a handful of military officers. Within hours, protests erupted on Mars and Earth. People filled the streets demanding justice, demanding change, demanding that the rescued children be protected rather than processed through broken bureaucratic systems. The political fallout was swift and brutal. Mars's chief security director resigned in disgrace. 3 corporate CEOs were arrested. The head of refugee services was suspended pending investigation. Suddenly, everyone wanted to claim they had always been on the side of alien rights, despite years of policies that enabled trafficking to flourish. David Chen became the legal guardian for all 30 children temporarily, filing emergency asylum claims that no judge dared deny given the public attention. But he was already working on something more permanent, tracing family members, searching refugee databases, trying to reunite children with parents they had been stolen from. On the 3rd day, something miraculous happened. Jake was helping feed the children breakfast when David rushed into the room, his face glowing with excitement. "Zara, we found them. We found your parents." Zara dropped the cup she was holding. Her skin patterns exploded into colors Jake had never seen before, brilliant golds and whites that made her look like she was made of starlight. Where are they?" "Refugee Settlement 7, about 200 kilometers from here. They've been searching for you for months. They filed reports, hired investigators, never stopped looking. Zara, they're coming here right now. They'll arrive in less than an hour." Jake felt his heart clench with joy, and something else he couldn't quite name. Relief, certainly. Happiness for Zara, but also loss. He had known this moment would come, had wanted it to come. But Zara had become his daughter in every way that mattered. Letting her go, even to her real parents, felt like losing a piece of himself. The next hour passed in a blur. The children were moved to a quieter wing of the building. Maya positioned cameras to document the reunion. This would be the hopeful ending to balance the darkness of her initial broadcast. Sarah and Marcus stood guard, still protective despite the operation being over. Then they arrived. Zara's parents were taller than her, their luminescent skin patterns more complex, but the family resemblance was unmistakable. The moment they saw their daughter, they made a sound Jake had never heard, a keening musical cry of pure emotion that made everyone in the room tear up. Zara ran to them, and they collapsed together in a tangle of 6-fingered hands and glowing skin, speaking rapidly in Verani, their patterns synchronizing in a display that looked like living art. They held her like they would never let go, checking her for injuries, crying, laughing, asking 1,000 questions at once. Jake watched from a distance, trying to be happy, trying not to let his own grief show. This was what he had fought for. This was the right ending. Then Zara pulled away from her parents and looked around frantically. When she saw Jake standing in the doorway, she ran to him and grabbed his hand. She said something in Verani to her parents, gesturing between them and Jake. Her father stepped forward, his patterns shifting to deep blues and greens, emotions Jake couldn't interpret. Through a translator device, he spoke in accented but clear English. "You are the one who saved our daughter, who protected her when we could not. In Verani culture, this creates a bond that cannot be broken. You are Kethara, chosen family. If you will accept, you are now part of our clan." Jake didn't know what to say. He looked at Zara, who was glowing with happiness, then at her parents, who watched him with gratitude and respect. I don't want to intrude on your family," Jake managed. Zara's mother stepped forward and took Jake's other hand. "You do not intrude. You belong. Our daughter has 2 families now. The one she was born to, and the one who chose her when she needed choosing most. Both are real. Both are forever." The arrangement that followed was unprecedented. Zara's parents would remain on Mars, settling in New Seattle. They would live near Jake, sharing custody in a way that human laws weren't quite designed for, but that everyone agreed to make work. Zara would split her time between two homes, two cultures, learning to navigate both Virani and human worlds. As weeks turned to months, other children were reunited with their families. Some, like Ticket, had lost their parents in the war that created the refugee crisis. For them, David arranged foster placements with carefully vetted families, and Jake found himself visiting regularly, unable to abandon any of the children he had helped save. The trafficking ring was systematically dismantled, trials began, sentences were handed down. But more importantly, the laws changed. The Interspecies Protection Act, nicknamed Zara's Law by the media, established comprehensive rights for alien children, created oversight for refugee processing, and imposed severe penalties for trafficking. 6 months after the rescue, Jake stood in a government assembly hall as the act was officially signed. Zara stood beside him, translating his prepared speech into multiple languages. Her parents sat in the front row, along with Maya, Sarah, Marcus, David, and Elena. Even Ghost had sent a message of support, though his identity remained a mystery. "I'm not a hero," Jake said to the assembled crowd and cameras. "I'm a taxi driver who happened to find a scared child and made the only choice a decent person could make. The real heroes are the ones who helped turn that one choice into systemic change. The real heroes are the people who refuse to look away from injustice." He looked down at Zara, whose patterns glowed with pride. "But most of all, the real heroes are the children who survived and who had the courage to trust again. They're the ones who reminded us what we should be fighting for." Years later, Jake would watch Zara graduate from university with degrees in both xenolinguistics and interspecies relations. He would see her become humanity's youngest ambassador to the newly formed coalition of refugee species. He would watch her give speeches at the United Nations on Earth, advocating for beings who had no voice, and sometimes, when she came home for family dinners that included both her Virani parents and Jake, when they sat around the table laughing and sharing stories from two completely different cultures, Zara would catch his eye, and her patterns would glow soft green, the color of love and gratitude. "Thank you, Cathara," she would say, "for seeing me when I was invisible, for protecting me when I was powerless, for showing me that family isn't about biology, it's about choice." Jake would smile and think back to that night in his taxi when a soft whimper from the back seat changed everything. He had been nobody special, just a man with a troubled past driving through empty streets, trying to get through another shift, another day, another year of an ordinary life. But one scared child had made him extraordinary, had given him purpose, family, and a legacy that would outlive him. The galaxy was vast and often cruel, but it was also filled with moments of unexpected grace, moments when strangers became family, when fear became courage, when one person's choice to help rippled outward and changed the universe. Jake Morrison had been a taxi driver who found an alien girl hiding in his back seat. In saving her, he had discovered something he never knew he was searching for, a reason to be the person he always could have been. And in the end, that made all the difference.